In this week's video, we'll be focusing on installing Fedora 36 on our M1 Max MacBook Pro using VMware Fusion Tech Preview 22H2. Just like my last video on Ubuntu, I'll be using the tips and techniques for Apple Silicon Tech Preview 22H2 guide from the VMware communities. You'll see that I have it loaded up on the right-hand side of my screen here with the 9 steps required for Fedora. I've already gone ahead and downloaded the Fedora Workstation Live ISO image, which you can get from getfedora.org/en/workstation/download. The image that I downloaded was this one here for ARM64, right there, Live ISO. That's what I got downloaded there. It's only 1.93 gigs. So I'll go ahead and just drag that up to my VMware Fusion. And we can see that it's got it loaded there, so I'll click on continue. I do want to customize settings because, again, I don't like 20 gigs capacity for my disk. So we'll give it a name. We'll just leave it the default of Fedora 64-bit ARM. Okay, now that it's loaded up, first thing that I want to do is increase my disk size from 20 gigs to 80. Apply. Next, I want to check the CPUs. Yep, we want to double this, get 2 CPUs there. Now you can probably just use 4 gig if you like here, so 4096, but I prefer going with 8 gig. So I'll submit that there. And we should be all set. Now, before I press the power button here, we do have a little bit of a workaround that we need to do. Now on your first boot from ISO, you need to go to the boot menu and select one of the entries there and press the letter E. Okay, so that's what I'll be doing here. So I'll turn on the power, click in, and I'll immediately hit the up arrow so that I can select Start Fedora Workstation Live 36. Now because we are on Apple Silicon, if I simply hit enter, then the VMware graphics is going to cause the screen to just stay black. It's not going to actually boot. So as a temporary workaround, we make this selection here. We press the letter E, and now we use our down arrow key to go down to this Linux line here, where it says the label and all that. Go all the way to the end. Oops, went a little bit too far. So right there after RHGB, put a space, and then you want to add the following: mod probe dot blacklist equals VMWGFX. Okay, so modprobe.blacklist equals VMWGFX. No spaces or anything within the typing. Now, in order to continue with our boot process, we'll hit Control X. Okay, so now it's going to go ahead and boot with that custom command in place. Once the live environment comes up, we will be selecting the option to install to disk. And because we did this boot option that blacklisted the VMware graphics, that will be defaulted into our installation. We'll be taking that out at the very end of the session here. This initial boot does take a little while to go. You might think it's hung, but we actually see the CD image turning blue up here at the top when it's accessing the ISO image. Okay, so we have our GNOME desktop environment loaded up there. So let's click in. There we go. And now you can see when I mouse over, installed a hard drive. We're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, that'll take a moment to load. There we go. English. I'll just click continue. Installation destination. We've got a little warning there, so we're just going to verify that we like the settings, and we do. It's going to use our 80 gig drive, so we'll click done. Checking storage configuration, all set. Okay, time and date, New York time zone, I like it. And we'll click on begin installation. Now while that's doing the installation, I'm going to double check my network settings. I'm going to switch over to bridged. I tend to get better results if I use bridged networking than NAT. Now NAT does work most of the time, but I've just had better results with bridged. Okay, while that's loading up, let's click back over to our PDF there. And we've got power on VM and follow procedure in the topic, Linux kernels do not boot on 22H2 Tech Preview. Now this is what we took care of already. That was just doing the menu selection, pressing E, and adding the Mod Pro blacklist. We're currently on step 4. Okay, the installation is finished, so we'll click on Finish Installation. And rather than reboot, I'm going to do just a regular power off. That way it gives me the opportunity to get a clean snapshot of a fresh installation. So we'll do that now. Okay, and now a big reason that I wanted to do this is because in preparing for this video, I came across a pretty big issue with following the directions here in the tech preview guidance. And I have the workaround, but I want to show you the error. So I have my snapshot here in order for me to revert to. So we'll just go ahead and close our snapshot manager and we'll hit play. Now right now we're using the 5.17.5-300 kernel, which unfortunately does not recognize the VMware graphics. So we've blacklisted the VMW GFX, which means that we're going to be limited to a 1024 by 768 resolution, which is fine for now because we'll get past that. Let me just turn these off for now since we're just doing a quick test. I'm not going to bother enabling third-party repositories. And we'll skip that and we'll get this set up here. Okay, great. And we don't need to do the tour. So first thing that we want to do is just go into a terminal. And we'll bring that full screen. And let's see if we can increase the font size just a little bit there. So if we follow along with the document here, and just do keep in mind that when this document was written, the steps probably work just fine. So with software, there's always new versions coming out and things change. So if we change over to our root user, okay, now we do a DNF upgrade. Now it's going to check the repositories and build up a cache so that it knows what software is available and what needs to be upgraded. Now this DNF upgrade does include updating the kernel to the latest version, which is 5.18.18 as of this recording. So we'll see that show up eventually up here. Now one of the things that's supposed to happen when you do this upgrade is the package for the kernel gets installed, and there's another package called Grubby that manages your grub boot menu. So what I found that happened when I was testing the other day is that when I did this DNF upgrade where it just updates all of the packages, including the kernel, when it came time for Grubby to get updated, there was some sort of a conflict. So what happened is Fedora thinks that it has all the packages up to date, but the kernel did not get updated into the grub menu. So when I tried rebooting, I was still on the older kernel that does not support the VMware graphics. I will be showing 2 different ways to get past this, just in case you did not create a snapshot ahead of time, or if you are stuck and you want to get past things without starting over. I'll show you how to do that. And we'll say yes, because we want to do all 696 upgrades. Let me use the mouse here. I'll scroll back up just a little bit here, and we can see that we've got kernel core 5.18.18 right up there. Yep. There it is. So that's one of the things that will be getting updated, or is supposed to get updated. And I'll just go ahead and fast forward this. Okay, and here are the errors. Okay, so the package is downloaded. They're in cache, waiting for an available successful transaction. Now the transaction test error. So it ran a test before it actually went to do anything. And there seems to be a problem here with Grubby 840-64 versus 840-57. So I had tried uninstalling Grubby, reinstalling it, and that didn't go so well. Well, actually, it did go well, but then the kernel still didn't get updated. So what I ended up having to do is run some other command in order to regenerate the grub configuration. So sudo grub2-mkconfig -o/boot/grub2/grub.cfg. Now that's not ideal. This is kind of messy in my mind. I don't really care for this. So rather than going through all of that, well, no, I said that I would show you how to do it. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's do a DNF remove Grubby and Grubby deprecated. So we can see that we've got Grubby there and we've got Grubby deprecated. What else do we have? Guess just those two. Let's just hit enter and see what's there. All right, so we also have this ext Linux bootloader. Now we'll go ahead and say yes. Hit enter. Now we'll do a DNF search for Grubby. So let's see, what did we remove? We removed 8.40.57. Okay, so we have Grubby and Grubby deprecated. It doesn't tell us the version, but just by doing a standard search. Let's just go ahead and install it. Oops, typo. Get that taken care of. Okay, 8.40-64. So that should be the more up-to-date one. So let's go ahead and hit yes. Okay. That's better. Let's try our upgrade again. The download is already completed. Everything's sitting in cache waiting for the transaction test to complete. Okay, looks like the transaction test succeeded and it's running through all of the different scripts to process all the packages. 1,417 packages, so once again I will fast forward. Okay, it looks like the scripts have finished up. Let's do a couple checks here. Now I'm just looking at the grub2 config file there in the etc folder to see what kernel is showing. Yeah, I still see the 5.17 in there. I don't see any indication of the 5.18 being updated. Okay, let's clear the screen there. Okay, so it looks like Grubby knows about the new kernel. It's got the title in there. I wonder if it's actually up to date now. Okay, well, let's assume that we're in good position here, even though that other file did not show the 5.18 kernel yet. Let's hope for the best. Let's be optimistic here. Let's go ahead and do step 8. So we're already root, so we'll do a vi etc mod probe.d. And we'll hit that anaconda. Comment out the blacklist for the VMware graphics, save the file, and we will reboot. Okay, if that kernel did get updated. We should see, nope, okay. So the kernel got updated, but as I suspected, it did not actually load into grub properly. So here, we're going to get stuck at this screen here because I have not blacklisted the VMware graphics. In order for us to be able to boot back in and get things fixed, it's not terribly difficult. So we just go up to virtual machine and we will do a restart. Click into the window and make sure that we have our Fedora Linux 5.17.5 selected, and we'll press E. We'll go back down to our Linux line, go to the end, and we will do our modprobe.blacklist equals vmwgfx and do Control X to have it boot. That way we can get back into the OS and do this extra command that I had mentioned earlier about the grub2-mk config. Okay, here we go, get logged in. And again, we will go into terminal. Maximize it and zoom in a little. Okay, first off, we want to change to the root user. All right, now we need to run this command to tell grub to update that menu so that when it boots up, it sees that that other kernel is installed and available. So we'll do a grub2-mk config-o boot grub2/grub.cfg. Hit enter. Okay, adding boot menu entry for UEFI firmware settings. All right, let's hope that was it, and we'll just do a reboot. Ah, see, now that's much better. We've got it there 5.18.18.-200. So we'll just go ahead and hit enter. Since I had moved the keys around, it canceled the automatic countdown. Now we want to make sure that the VMware graphics are being loaded properly and we can get better resolution than just this 1024 by 768 we've been dealing with. So let's get logged in. And since we have that updated kernel, we should be in much better shape here. So I'll click on the top right corner here and select settings. And we'll go down to display, resolution. Now I didn't show this earlier, but if I had gone in here and shown resolution before, we would not have had that drop down because the VMware graphics had been blacklisted. But now that we have a kernel that's supporting the graphics, we do have the drop down available, and we can go down and select our appropriate resolution, which for this recording is 1920 by 1080. And we'll hit apply. Keep changes, and we'll just go into full screen. There we go. And you'll see that sometimes the sound works, sometimes it doesn't. That's one of the little glitches that we seem to have here. And we do see those error messages pop up on the screen here. This is the result of using a tech preview software and not having everything up to date and globally released. For now, we seem to be in pretty good shape here. Let's go ahead and open our browser. Okay, let's hit Fedora magazine. Yep, internet's working just fine. And go into the software store. Check for updates. We are up to date. Good. Explore. And you know what? We did Gimp when we did Ubuntu. Let's go ahead and do Gimp here as well. So let's just do a search for that. There we go, and we'll go ahead and install that. All right, right, oh, that's a subtle difference between Ubuntu and Fedora. If you watched my Ubuntu video, you would notice that once the installation of Gimp was done, the little trash can icon turned red and there was no open. We actually had to open up our activities and go find Gimp from there. But here we can just go ahead and click open. And yeah, that loaded up pretty quick. I haven't timed that in comparison to the Ubuntu launch, but not too bad. Okay, so those were the steps that I had to go through in order to get things working and having everything up to date. Let me go ahead and shut this down. There we go. We'll exit out of full screen. And let me show you the other method that I discovered was working as well. So first off, we're going to create a snapshot. Install 1. Yeah, let's just call that install 1. And now we'll work on install 2. So let's revert back to our initial install. There we go. So at this point, if you think back, my initial install just had completed the live CD install to the hard disk. So we did not do our upgrade. We haven't done any of this extra stuff here yet. Okay, we'll click Start Setup again. We'll turn those off again. Next, next, and skip. Okay. And we do not need the tour. And just like last time, we're going to go straight into our terminal. Maximize that. Zoom in twice. Now this time, rather than just doing DNF upgrade and letting it do all the packages and then having to deal with Grubby, the very first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to tell it to upgrade the kernel. So let's change over to sudo first. I phrased that wrong. We'll change over to root using the sudo command. Okay, there we go. Now, DNF upgrade kernel. Now it'll build up its cache, find out what version's available, and then it'll prompt us and let us know what it's going to be doing here. Okay, that took a bit longer than I expected. It seems that I got throttled on my my cache updates. And before I proceed here, since I didn't do it earlier, I'm just going to go ahead and show here that we still have the VMware graphics blacklisted. So let's take a quick look at our settings here just so that I can show you that resolution setting there. There we go. Notice how we're stuck here. We can't click anything. Yeah, so this is what we're trying to get past, along with the fact that we can't boot without that blacklist in place. So we'll close this and we'll say yes to updating the kernel. Okay, kernel should be updated. So let's check grub. And we need to scroll up a little bit. Do we have that 517 in here still? We sure do, but look at that. We do have our 51818. So remember before when I scrolled up through here, we only had the 517. We did not have the 518 updated. So when we do just a DNF upgrade kernel, Grubby was able to update the grub boot menu as it's supposed to. So this means that we should be able to go in and remove that blacklist of the VMware graphics from the Anaconda denied list reboot, and have our proper resolution. So let's go ahead and verify that. Looking good, looking good. It defaulted to our 5.18 kernel. All right, let's go into full screen. And notice that we're still stuck for the moment at our 1024 by 768 resolution. We'll get that fixed here in just a moment. And we'll go right up into our settings. Hit display and look at that. We've got our drop down and we can switch over to HD. Keep changes. Okay, so we are all set. I showed you two different ways of getting the kernel up to date. One being the DNF upgrade, and then the workarounds with Grubby and the other grub2-mk config command, as well as just doing a DNF upgrade kernel. So now that our kernel is up to date, we can come into our software management here, and we'll notice that we have a whole bunch of software that still needs to be updated because we only updated the kernel. So at this point, we can just tell that to download and let it do its thing. And it looks like, yes, we're having the same Grubby compatibility issue. So let's uninstall Grubby and Grubby Legacy, and we'll try redoing this here just like we did earlier. So let's open up a terminal. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and run a sudo dnf remove Grubby deprecated. There we go. Remove all three of those. Yes, please. And now we will install Grubby. Yes. Okay, now that we have our Grubby up to date, let's see whether or not this software will go ahead and process its transactions properly. Well, I guess the cache didn't like the fact that we've already updated Grubby, so let's close that out. Let's just revert to the terminal and have hope that we have better experience there. Okay, transaction check succeeded and transaction test succeeded. Okay, looks like our update is complete. Let's use the software manager to check its perspective. Up to date, last checked 18 minutes ago. Restart now. Excellent. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end this week's video. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button, and take care.